Call to order. Could we have quiet, please? We have a quorum. Could we have the roll call, please, Weston?
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Sticks.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina.
Here.
Councilmember Rule.
Here.
Councilmember Lang.
Here.
Councilmember Whitman. Here.
Thank you, Weston, and welcome everyone to the Tuesday, August 15th, 2023 special meeting of the Ojai City Council. Weston, would you please say the pledge?
Yes, Mayor.
Thank you.
Would everyone please stand? Place your right hand over your heart. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Weston. Motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move to approve, but I do want to correct something in the minutes.
The consent, you mean? Okay, but first we'll do this. Is there a second to approve the agenda?
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Okay, great. And then we will move on to the consent calendar. Motion to approve?
That's the minutes, right?
Yes.
Yeah. And I want to make a correction. Should I do that now? I'll approve it except for my correction.
Okay,
Sure.
go ahead. Yep.
On page, I think it's 1-5 of the minutes. Yes. The July minutes, page 1-5, and it's a correction that I made previously, but I know that you all have a lot to keep track of, but on page 1-5 where it says public comment, and it lists all the names of the people in favor of the removal of the commissioner, I am certain that Barry Rabe and Dee Dee Dorskin are in favor of keeping the commissioner. Thank you. And then the rest I'll do during the meeting, just so we
Okay,
reference it.
so a motion to approve the consent calendar?
Yes.
And a second?
Yes.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, wonderful. All right, we will move on to discussion. We just have one discussion item tonight. It's proposed removal of a planning commissioner. And just a little background for the public and why we're deliberating on this topic again for the third time. At our July 11th City Council meeting, Council majority voted to ask Planning Commissioner Jeffrey Starkweather to step down. At the following meeting on July 25th, Mayor Pro Tem Francina pulled the minutes from that meeting and then made a motion to start this process over again at a future meeting because of some questions about the original motion. Council majority voted to revisit this issue, and this is why we are here now. So, Mr. City Manager, is there a staff report?
Just very briefly, I provided a written staff report to try to set the context of what we're doing. The mayor just summarized that. I think everyone knows that we're here under the process specified in our municipal code that allows the mayor or 3 council members to agendize a proposal to remove an at-will city commissioner from a commission. In either case, it requires a public vote of 3 city council members to approve the action. I also remind everyone in my staff report that that commission appointments are made on an at-will basis and do not require citation of cause in making the action. I think that's important for people to understand, and sometimes hard for people to get the point of it. But in all California cities, appointments to city commissions are done on an at-will basis. I've never heard of one that did it in any other way. And just as city managers and city attorneys, department heads are accustomed to the idea that when they're appointed that they're subject to dismissal on an on a no-cause at-will basis, the same thing is done with the commission appointments throughout the state. In fact, that's the common way it's done. And I think it's important for us to recognize these are community volunteers. They step up and they fill a role that's important to our community. And I think Mr. Starkweather and all of our commissioners are due that respect and that appreciation. And I think that is important to acknowledge as we go into a discussion like this. Especially with the increase in the number of city councils that operate on a district-based election, it has become more common that commissioners are appointed by district council members and with terms that run concurrently with the term of the appointing council member. Our code doesn't do that, which is an issue the council may wish to consider at some point in the future. We have the district council members assigned to each seat, but we haven't consolidated that with the terms of office, and something that I think the council might want to think about in the future. It's not why we're here today, however, and I bring it up only to point out that the removal of commissioners should not ideally imply anything more than a desire on the part of a council to seat different people or different perspectives. It's a council prerogative. So I have no idea where this vote will go tonight. I steadfastly refuse to ask council members how they're going to vote on anything. But I do think it's important that, and I urge graciousness on all of our part, Pollyanna that I am, because we are, even in disagreement, neighbors. So I think it's important that we go about something like this with that in mind. I think it's important for the council to make a decision and move on because there's business that needs to be attended to. I think Mr. Starkweather and all of our commissioners deserve our thanks for stepping up and doing the work that they do. And in that regard, he deserves our thanks whether he remains seated or not. And with that Pollyanna statement, I'm done.
Right.
Okay, any questions from council? Mayor Pro Tem? Yep.
Could you also report what you've stated at the bottom of your staff report, that in the history of, as far back the decades that I've been involved, there's never been a commissioner removed for any reason except absences, and the one time that someone did try to remove a commissioner, it failed. So this is an unprecedented move to remove a commissioner before their term.
We're still on
is up.
questions.
Yes, I'm
just
asking.
questions.
Well, my question was for him to finish, but since I finished it for him, is that all right? Is that did I state it correctly?
Mostly. You asked me to find out if we had commissioners replaced in this city before. And I said, after talking to some local people, I said I wasn't able to find an example where anyone was removed for other than absenteeism or, I forget what the other one was, moving residency. Obviously, I've seen it in other cities, but I haven't seen it. I couldn't report that there was any I was aware of in this city.
May I ask another question? So my thinking when I made my motion and asked for a staff report, I specifically, and it's in the records, in the minutes, that my motion included asking for a staff report. So you've done the best you can as our interim city manager with what you know. But what I was really looking for, and it took me a while to realize, is that I wanted to know if there was any factual basis to Mayor Stick's allegations, because unfortunately, we are not starting with a clean slate. Everyone here recognizes that.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yeah.
we're on
Okay.
short questions for
Okay.
staff. Do you have a
So-
short question for the
so-
staff?
So, and it sounds like you do not know. Am I right? Am I characterizing that you're not, you don't, what
The
is?
right characterization would be that you never asked me that question, and I wouldn't have answered it, because this is an at-will situation, and I would not have delved into the issues of cause, one way or the other. But that's just a straight answer to the question.
Yes, but this, it's an important point, because.
Mayor Pro Tem,
Yeah.
just a reminder, we are on questions.
Okay.
We're not on discussion.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
Thank you.
Councilmember Rule?
Yeah. So, City Attorney Summers, when I asked you for case law around a situation such as this, you sent me a example of case law from San Francisco, and I read through it, and I found more dissimilar things than I found similar things, but that's not the point of my question. Very many more dissimilar things than similar things. But my point of my question is, when I went to the San Francisco website to check further on the case, what I did see was something that said, and this was from the district attorney, no,
It's a
excuse me.
question.
No, it is a question. It is absolutely a question. So if I could take the time to make the question, it would be much appreciated.
The short questions.
Thank you. No, there's nothing that says short. Don't start. So basically, what that website said, the district attorney's office said, you can fire a commissioner for good reason or no reason. And this was from the city. Good reason or no reason, but not for an illegal reason. And this is on their front page. Now, I tried to figure out what they considered to be an illegal reason, and I wasn't able to delve deeply into that. I couldn't find where they said, okay, yeah, you can do good reason and no reason, but you can't do illegal reason, and here's what illegal reason is. I didn't find that. All I found was that statement. So my question to you is, what would be an illegal reason? Now, it's on the San Francisco District Attorney's website right there. So they have to believe that there is an illegal reason. And I just don't know what it is, and that's what I'm asking you. And I apologize for having taken the time, but I felt like there had to be context in what I was talking about.
So I'm not familiar with the statement you're citing from the San Francisco District Attorney's Office. However, an illegal reason for removal of a commissioner would be a reason that violates applicable law and policy. As an example, the state and federal constitutions, more broadly the state constitution, protect certain immutable characteristics, gender, race, sexual orientation, that list of characteristics. Removing a commissioner for that reason, solely because they are a one race or another, that would most likely be unlawful.
And I have a follow-up question. Furthermore, we have heard contention, not just from Commissioner Starkweather, but from others as well, that, and this is what your case cited was, and like I said, I'm not going to use that case because then we would have to get into delving deeply into that case. But what that case was about was freedom of speech, the right to say what you want to say. And they made that case that this was an illegal firing because it was because of freedom of speech. That was the case that the plaintiffs made against the firing. And there are a lot of reasons why that case was decided against the plaintiffs. And like I said, they're more dissimilar than they are similar. So I'm wondering if you can speak to the fact that in that case, they were sued for freedom of speech, violation of freedom of speech. In other words, fired because of freedom of speech. That's what I specifically asked you for, and that's what you specifically sent me. So do you have any thoughts around this particular situation? And once again, you can fire for good reason, no reason, but not for an illegal reason. Is freedom of speech an illegal reason?
Not for a high-level policymaker. That's what the
Okay.
Lumpkin versus Brown
Right.
case makes clear, that you can, and I'll quote, government employees who occupy policymaking positions may even be removed solely on the basis of political affiliation, whether or not the employees make public statements because of, quote, the need for political loyalty of employees, not to the end that effectiveness and efficiency be ensured, but to the end that representative government may not be undercut by tactics obstructing the implementation of policies of the new administration. Further quote, applying the Pickering balancing test, we hold, in this case, the Ninth Circuit held that the city's interest in having commissioners who work to promote city policies far outweighs any commissioner's First Amendment interest in publicly expressing views that subvert those policies.
Right.
So in that case, you've asked me whether my views on it, and in that case, the city of San Francisco removed a commissioner who had articulated a series of views that were manifestly at odds with the city's views. particularly there a commissioner who was on the Human Rights Commission advocating views that were abhorrent as to gays and lesbians. Here, this is somewhat different, but this basic rule is the same. The city council has a right to choose commissioners that support its policies as it sees fit, and it would be lawful if the council were to choose a different commissioner on the basis of a policy view. That would not violate the First Amendment.
Okay, so it would not violate the First Amendment if indeed we could determine that there was a policy difference. The other thing, since you brought it up, I will mention is that,
Just
excuse
remind-
me, Commissioner
a
Starkweather.
question.
Yeah, there is a question here.
Okay.
Would you say that Commissioner Starkweather is a high-level policymaker? Because the Planning Commission does not make policy.
The Planning Commission recommends policies to the city council, so yes, I would say that.
Okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Councilmember Whitman.
I have some questions. So, we held a hearing on July 11th, and a whole bunch of people submitted written statements, and a whole bunch of people spoke. And I'll just characterize what was said as being
Just,
So the majority of the input from the community was in favor of removal of Mr. Starkweather. And so my question is, what happens with all of that? Is that part of our record if in fact Mr. Starkweather is removed and he decides to sue? Is it all like part of the record already, or do we need to move formally to have our comments from all those people who came out incorporated into the record, or is it just there already?
All of the comments are already on the tape and in the minutes, is reflected in the minutes.
Okay.
There's no need to formally tie the two together. As noted, the council's vote was to start over. So to a certain extent, tonight is a new hearing on the same question. And if it were ever litigated, all of it's on the tape, and we transcribe the tapes, and that's what the court would see.
Okay.
Can I have a question?
are you finished, Councilmember Whitman?
I got a couple other questions. So, I know what the term at will means, but I'm an attorney, so I don't want to assume what other people believe at will means. Can either one of you kind of explain the concept of at will?
Yeah, happy to. The city understands at will means that you can be removed from a position for any reason or no reason, but not an unconstitutional or illegal reason.
Okay.
And it's equivalent in common parlance. Most private employees of a private business are at will. They can be removed for any reason or no reason, but not an unlawful or unconstitutional reason. In distinction with civil service employees, which are the city's employees, but not commissioners, who are protected and have to be removed only for good cause, as shown under applicable rules and regulations.
Yeah, in that case that we've been talking about, they actually list race, religion, color, ancestry, age, sex, sexual orientation, disability, or place of birth as things that you could not single out as a reason for dismissing somebody. So my next question is, I guess for each of you, I'll ask you first, Matt. In your experience, is it unusual for a city to allow a non-city resident to serve on the Planning Commission?
So I've not done a survey of every city, but all the cities that I've worked in limit commissions to residency. Not, I'm sure there's some that beyond Ojai that don't, but all the cities that I've worked in, that's the limitation.
And Mark?
In my 10 cities, I've never been in a city where a planning commissioner was a non-resident. I've been in cities where historic preservation or architectural commission members with special skills were from outside the city, but never a planning commissioner. Not that it couldn't be done, but I've never seen it.
So in our ordinances that establish the Planning Commission, there's a statement that says, while it's preferred that all members of the commission have primary residence and be domiciled within the city, a minimum of 3 members of the commission must have primary residence and be domiciled within the city. So my question is, when we make that statement, when the city makes that statement in its ordinance that it's preferred that all members of the commission have primary residence and be a city resident, is that a policy statement?
Yeah, it's a policy statement. It's enforceable by the council each time they make an appointment.
Okay.
I want clarification on that.
Just a reminder, council, if you can bring it through the chair. Mayor Pro Tem, you have a question?
Are you done?
Yeah.
Okay. It's my understanding that the policy is that there can be commissioners that live outside the city limit, because we have such a small 4.2-mile city, and it is recognized that that city would not exist if it wasn't for the people outside the city rallying every time our small city is attacked. And that's a very important point. We would not have the small town we have without the support
Question.
of the people outside the city.
Focus
Well,
on
I'm
question.
defending because
But
there's an
this-
insinuation.
Excuse,
here.
but we are not in discussion.
Yes, but we are in
Do- do
discussion,
you-
whether we
do you-
like it or not.
No, no, we're not. I'm running this
This was a
meeting.
discussion.
If
Okay.
you have another question.
I do have another question. So is a character assassination or an allegation that Mr. Starkweather was a misogynist and that he was a trouble for our staff, both of those allegations have, to the best of my knowledge, been disputed. But is that, when you say a good reason or no reason, but not an illegal reason, is that considered an illegal reason?
No.
Okay, and that's your opinion,
Right, my advice to the city is that the council can remove any commissioner, including Starkweather, although tonight's only Starkweather, for any reason or no reason, but not an unlawful reason. Removing him for past statements would not be unlawful. It's up to the council to decide, but it would be lawful. We wait majority direction.
All right, any other questions from
Yes.
council?
Yeah, I do have a
Ca-
question.
I have another question.
Go ahead, Susan.
Okay.
Finish up.
Can I ask a question? Because since normally we ask questions of staff reports, I'm going to ask, since the mayor's statement is included here as if it's a staff, like a staff report.
Well, it's
As
not in this, it's not a part of this.
It's right here. It's in the packet. Your statement is here in the packet. Yeah, not the past statement. So I would like to know if this statement is, I would like for you to clarify this statement for the audience. It says here that I have previously advised Mr. Starkweather of my intention to bring this item to the special meeting agenda of August 15, and I've made 2 offers to him to speak to me by phone. He has declined to resign, and so I asked my colleagues to consider his appointment. But it's important, I think, that you state also that Mr. Stark did. I'll put it as a question.
Questions for staff right now.
But this is in here like a staff report, as if it's a staff report. I think it's important that you clarify that Mr. Starkweather wanted to meet with you personally with our city manager. That should have been included in your statement. We want full disclosure. We want transparency.
So you have a
We want
question.
honesty.
Exactly. Do you have a question for staff right now?
Well, I'm considering that your statement is like a staff report. There is no real staff report, so there's not too many questions I can ask. Okay, I'm done.
So I would have.
Just a minute, staff, any comments?
The code requires that the mayor or 3 council members begin the removal process, that the mayor's statement does so. Mayor Pro Tem or any other council members entitled to ask the mayor any questions on it. The mayor can answer or refuse to answer,
Okay.
as council may desire.
Okay, and just to clarify, I asked on August 2nd, to answer your question, Mr. Starkweather for a phone call. He declined my offer and instead replied that he would like to meet with our city manager and me. And as you all know, we have a very busy staff. We have a limited number of hours with our city manager, and I want his time to be devoted to moving council majority priorities forward. So instead of talking to me on the phone, Mr. Starkweather opted not to have a meeting at all. And then I asked him again on August 7th. I emailed him to ask for a second call, and I did not get any response. So that is the full story.
So you have never My question to you is, you've never had a face-to-face conversation before all of this?
I have,
with
yes,
our-
I have met with Mr. Starkweather in the past. I asked him for 2 phone conversations. That's the answer. Any other questions from council?
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. I just want to clarify, City Attorney, you are stating that, or you did state, or did you state, like, did you state that there are no First Amendment rights attached to a illegal firing? I mean, because Councilmember Whitman read through the standard protected classes, right? So that's great, you know, the standard protected classes, very good. But I'm still unclear whether or not, whether it's your belief or, you know, you have either some sort of legal backing to say that First Amendment is not a protected state in the firing. So when they say illegal, you know, at will, no reason, at will, no reason, except illegal. It is your belief, and you're telling us here that that a violation of a First Amendment right would not be an illegal reason.
The First Amendment doesn't guarantee the right to speak subject without being removed from high-level policymaking positions. So you're mischaracterizing what I'm saying. Let me restate
No,
it.
that's why I'm asking.
Let me restate it. The First Amendment protects anybody from arrest for what they say, subject to, except for true threats and things like that. It protects against most civil liability except for defamation law. It also protects government employees from being fired for their jobs for what they say if they are not occupying a policymaking position. It does not protect government employees who occupy a policymaking position from being fired for what they say if what they say is antithetical to the government for which they work. It also does not protect commissioners who are not employees from being removed from their position, which is not firing. Firing is employment. This is not employment. This is a commissioner. Commissioners who are being removed in part as a basis for what they have said, if what they have said is antithetical to the city or is inconsistent with the city's policies, that removal is not a protected First Amendment interest, or does not violate the First Amendment. And the basis for it is the case we've all been citing, Lumpkin versus Brown, 109 F. 3rd, 1498.
Yes, and so a follow-up question. First of all, I did not mischaracterize what you said. It was a question to clarify what you said because I was unsure. So I did not mischaracterize. It was instead clarification. That's the first thing. The second thing is so the things that would be in contention would be, you know, did he say anything that was was contrary to city policy? Correct. I mean
That's one of the questions for the council to consider.
Right. So
if the removal is for cause.
Right. So right. So we would have to, but it's not for cause.
It could be not for cause. It could be for cause. It's up to the council.
Okay. All right. And if it were for not cause, would it be, I'm just trying to get to, the real question is there a pending lawsuit at risk here because there is a First Amendment right for a, you know, we've had Councilmember Whitman say that Jeffrey's a political activist and therefore, you know, ... take that where you will. But he is also, I'm assuming the problem is political speech or something. So I just want to get to the idea that, you know, is the city council inoculated? I mean, you're never inoculated because and I'm testament to that. Anybody can sue anybody about anything. Thank you very much. But is the city inoculated against First Amendment filing? Basically, so saying an illegal, whatever, not firing, whatever you would call it, removal, thank you, an illegal removal based on a claim of a First Amendment right. And, you know, you know, when you say, okay, you had the Human Rights Commissioner, you know, for San Francisco who said, you know, lesbian, gays, et cetera, you know, are all going to hell. You know, he's a pastor and he's brim and firestone, that kind of stuff. Well, that's pretty obviously problematic. But this is much more nuanced. And so, number one, I want to know if you think the city is inoculated based on what you said and based on the nuances around the different cases. Because you could take contention with, is he a high-level policymaker? Well, you could take, so that's, and I still don't have an answer to that. Is the city inoculated from yet another lawsuit, given that anyone can sue anybody, around a First Amendment?
My advice is that the city could defend the removal of Mr. Starkweather if that is what action is taken. However, there are no guarantees in litigation, as you've noted. Mr. Starkweather said in his comments this afternoon that he does not have a personal intention to sue. Nothing is binding on that front. He could still file the suit. Someone else could file it for him, although it would be questionable if they have standing to do that. I think only he would have standing. I don't know if he will or won't sue, so I can't guarantee anything.
Okay.
But I think we can defend the suit if he does file suit.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your clarifications. Thank you for edifying me on the laws. And I rely upon you to do that. So I just want you to know I did not mean to mischaracterize, but I did need clarification. So thank you.
Okay, any other questions?
I'm sorry, I have one more question.
Mayor Pro Tem?
It's a simple question. So you are characterizing a planning commissioner, any planning commissioner, as a high-level policymaker?
Yes. The reason is twofold. Number one is noted they make recommendations to the council on policy, including the general plan, zoning code amendments, and other significant policy documents. And that role is the recommendation, not an adoption. Adoption has to be made by the elected officials. Second, they also exercise land use power. They approve conditional use permits. They approve entitlements for land use projects that are significant aspects of the community. In that role, they are subject to appeal, of course, to the elected officials, but they are high-level policymaking officials.
Thank you.
All right, council, let's move on to public comment. First, we have Larry Steingold, then Bill Miley, then Steve Quillisi. And I'm going to make a request from the audience. If you could stay silent before, during, and after comments, and if you agree with someone, you can always use jazz hands, right?
Larry Steingold, good evening, resident. I think we're here not because if back July, I believe it's July 25th, everybody here, not everybody, but there are people here who basically ripped him another one while he wasn't here, which is why we're here tonight. Because if you did it the right way, we wouldn't be here. Because if you can get rid of a city councilor at will, then that's it. But to do it when he wasn't here has caused a huge problem because now, hey, can you get hung in absentia? Can you get lynched when you're not here? So, I mean, that's my problem. Not that you don't like Jeffrey or Jeffrey's a pain just like I am or whatever else. It's okay, okay? But to do it when somebody's not here, nah, that doesn't work. If you have the right to do it, do it. But don't do it at night, okay? Or at least maybe do it at midnight, okay? Mr. Whitman, in all due respect, if you say you're an attorney and you keep saying here that I'm an attorney and this and that, please, if you're going to be legal counsel for the city council, please do that. If not, try not to be their attorney. That's his job, correct? Because you keep saying you're an attorney, and I know you're a defense attorney. It's great experience, and I think it's wonderful. But you keep saying that, so either you're giving them legal advice or you're not. That's what I'm just saying, but you keep saying, I'm an attorney, and so that implies something. Also, regarding, I would bring up their whole July 25th video. Weston can bring it up the whole meeting and let Mr. Starkweather go minute by minute and let him comment, on every line item, on every digit made for the last 4 hours or 5 hours of that meeting when he wasn't here, which will solve everybody's conversation here, because then he can comment on everything and we can all go home. Because then you can say, next week, you can put him on the agenda, we're going to get rid of him at will and call it a day, and then we can all move on. We have spent 8 months dealing with a lawsuit with Becker, video, audio, this, everything else. Can we please get on to getting things done, like finishing the roads, which we're doing a great job. It's great. We see concrete getting poured. So please, just put the video back on for the July 25th meeting, and we'll sit here and we'll do it again, because he's going to go over it.
Thank you.
So thank you very much.
Thank you, Larry. Next, we have Bill Miley, then Steve Quillisi, then Sherry Ann Kate.
Hello. Appointing a citizen to a city commission carries responsibility for the city's future. Wanting to remove a commissioner before their appointed term is up also carries responsibility for the city's future. What does the mayor want for Ojai's future? Her votes against the Becker project indicate little support for deeded affordable housing. Her lack of leadership for deeded affordable housing shows less than enthusiastic support for a housing element. A key crisis here in Ojai is housing justice, with close to 50% of renters paying over 30% of their annual income for a roof over their heads. That's a fundamental human security crisis. Our Planning Commission is key to making the housing element work. Of the 19 affordable housing action steps the city committed to, 18 are co-responsibility of the Planning Commissioners and City Development Department. The mayor tries. A rent stabilization ordinance just passed and a developer-required marketing ordinance. The first somewhat late in the game, and the second possibly limiting free speech. Getting rid of a commissioner, why does she want this? I suggest it's because Commissioner Starkweather is well known for his advocacy of deeded affordable housing and housing justice. And the mayor does not have that on her priority list for the city's future. She likes EDUs and house share, neither of which address the large problem. The task for commissioners in California is to do what is best for the entire city now and in the future. Please consider what commissions do. One key is getting more citizen input and providing transparency. It appears that a key element is wanting to remove Commissioner Starkweather is his vocal support for deeded affordable housing. California law and recent new methods of enforcement are being put in place to encourage such development. Our housing element is the only legal document requiring state approval. Thus, I believe it is important that we keep Jeffrey Starkweather on the Planning Commission. He's a retired civil rights and land use attorney who has extensive experience at city, county, and state levels with affordable housing, land use planning, sustainable communities, and social justice. Thanks.
Thank you, Bill. Next, we have Steve Quillisi, then Sherry Ann Kate, then Barbara Bowman.
Good evening. How sad that we find ourselves still debating this. Surely you must all realize at this point that a majority of the citizens of Ojai consider city council meetings a circus, a joke, a waste of your time and our time when there are real problems to be solved. I recognize that my speaking tonight paints a target on my back for similar retribution, but these things must be said. There is no good reason to remove Jeffrey Starkweather from the Planning Commission. Your pathetic attempt last month at character assassination didn't fool the people, and ultimately you couldn't even get 3 votes in City Council to remove him. It might get you and the city a defamation lawsuit, though, which would be hard to defend against. City Manager James Vega confirmed that Jeffrey stopped using staff time when he was asked. Now you fall back on just because I said so as a rationale to remove a commissioner. Clearly a matter of personal revenge with nothing to back it up. The fact that you can legally remove a commissioner for no cause doesn't mean you should. Mr. Starkweather's performance as a planning commissioner has not been political. He has followed the Ojai Municipal Code in his deliberations, as have all of us. If you find fault with our decisions, you should change the code, and we will enforce the new rules. Further, consider the chilling effect this removal would have on prospective commissioners. To volunteer, one must agree not to endorse the right candidate for election. Calling Jeffrey a political activist, I know, was meant to be a criticism, but instead it showed an ignorance of the duties of a planning commissioner. I'm sure that on many political issues, Jeffrey and I are on opposite sides, but that is irrelevant to our deliberations and our decisions as planning commissioners. Councilmember Lang has said we need to put this issue behind us, and I wholeheartedly agree. The best way to do that is to vote against this proposed removal and allow Mr. Starkweather to serve out the term to which he was appointed. You can simply appoint someone else to fill his seat at that time if that's your pleasure. Removing him now with such a weak rationale will make you look like petty, insecure, vengeful tyrants. Not what you want, not what the city wants. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Next, we have Sherry Ann Kate, then Barbara Bowman, then Len Claife.
When I vote for city council members, I vote for activists. I vote particularly for activists that represent my values. If I could vote for planning commissioners, I would vote for people who are knowledgeable and educated about planning issues. However, planning commissioners are appointed by city council, so I don't get to vote. Since I moved here in 1988, I've seen our planning commissioners really impartially review items on their agenda and make cogent recommendations to the city council. They were familiar with the zoning and building codes, and particularly the general plan. Until recently, I have never seen citizen activists be appointed to the Planning Commission and then publicly oppose direction from the city and its representatives. Since planning commissioners serve at the direction of the city council, I urge this city council to replace any planning commissioners they recognize as being biased or having activist stands in their capacity as an advisor to the city government. Thank you very much for making a good decision about this.
Thank you, Sherry Ann. Next, we have Barbara Bowman, then Len Claife, then John Brooks.
Barbara Bowman, can you hear me? Barbara Bowman, retailer, property owner, resident. Mayor Sticks and Councilman Whitman, I want to say that you are really major disruptive force of the city council, and you have been. You're basically blowing up any working possibility of our local city council. The public hanging and attempted humiliation of Jeffrey Starkweather over contrived wrongdoings was just another attempt to put a wrench in one of the most successfully working commissions we have. This commission, the Planning Commission, has a history of approval and agreement 5-1, or 5-0 actually, and they meet 100% of the time. Jeffrey's fellow commissioners want him to remain and approve of the work he does as part of the commission. We could remove any obstacle that is presently impeding the functioning of our city. It would be you and you, Councilman Whitman and Mayor Sticks. You are the impediment to any council functioning well. Because Whitman and Sticks aiding the lawsuit and supporting simply Ojai against the city over the Becker project and stonewalling the Cabrillo Economic Corporation, which is a 100% affordable building, housing project, we are probably going to get sued. They have every right to sue. The problem is that Whitman and Sticks, I wish, were getting personally sued, not the city of Ojai. We don't deserve it. We haven't asked for it. We haven't even agreed with the way you voted. In fact, the last council voted 4-1, you were the only one that objected, to pass the Becker project. You have put us in an absolute mess, month after month after month. You drop another wrench in another project over and over again, and you create chaos at the city council. This problem exists on every level. I brought photos of what is now taking place downtown, which I have with me, and I'll show you. The library bookstore, Twice Told Tales, has become a homeless camp every night. Why, you ask? They have no place to go. And our city council has refused to actually address the problem. Dignity Moves has a solution, but Sticks and Whitman show no interest in advancing any of those ideas. So we will soon become the promenade in Santa Monica, with homeless people forced to take up residences in commercial zones, in doorsteps, in doorways. The same group, Simply Ojai, stopped the Becker project, which by now would have been underway, and the Beckers, who are restorers. They recently took the old Elks Lodge in Ventura and returned it to a magnificent building. You should all go see it. Because I'm going to finish too. Because what they do, we would be lucky to have them. They restore things. They would restore it to its original beauty.
Thank you, Barbara.
And ADUs are not affordable housing, Mr. Whitman. We need those built.
Thank you, Barbara. And just a note to the public, there is a group who is working very hard on the unhoused situation, so please stay tuned. And I've been involved, and as other council members have, so there are some great people working on it. Okay, Len.
Leonard Clafe, I live in the city of Ojai. Mr. Summers, I vehemently disagree with your analysis. I cited a United States Supreme Court case in the email that I hopefully you all got. Certainly, if a commissioner or anyone employed by the city has views that are antithetical is a pretty strong word. And it's appropriate when you're talking about a human rights commissioner who hates gay people. That's antithetical. Jeff may disagree here and there with some city policy, but I don't know that anything he has ever said comes anywhere close to the level of antithetical. And you're asking for, I don't know what he's going to do. I have not discussed this with him, but we keep on getting sued. Half our budget goes to the police. Pretty soon the other half is going to go to litigation. This is silly. Next question I have is why no reasons now, as opposed to whatever it was 6 weeks ago, when you had to have a reason that was made up, that was beyond idiotic and vicious. And the reason, that only reason it makes sense to me is because, one, it gave you an excuse to have an emergency, so you could do it while he's in Europe, and you could rile up the public and put everybody who disagrees on notice that you too could be subject to such treatment. I truly respect everyone's right to come up here as a citizen and say whatever they want. But I would ask you to examine the comments that were made by the people who are opposed to Jeff remaining on the council and see if any one of them had anything to say based on their own personal experience with Jeff. If anyone had anything to say other than dittoing the remarks of our mayor in her memo that was attached to the council agenda 6 weeks ago. I think the answer is pretty close to zero. Ditto to Mr. Quillisi. That was one of the most articulate statements I've heard here at City Council meeting. Mr. Quillisi is hardly a flaming radical. This whole thing is absurd. I'm embarrassed to have to come here all the time. I'm embarrassed for you all to have to be here for this nonsense 3 times. Enough.
Thank you, Len. Next, we have John Brooks, then Hannah Turner, and then Renee Roth.
Good evening, and ditto to Mr. Quillisi. His remarks were outstanding. I wrote this down. Good evening, my name is John. And when I moved to Ojai in the early 1970s on Signal Street, we moved here because of my wife's long history with the Theosophical Society. In those days, council members and the appointed mayor were honest, loving people, including Ms. Francina, who would never use character assassination as a means to accomplish a political agenda. It was you, Mayor Sticks. It was you who launched the false misogyny attack on Mr. Starkweather, releasing the private email obtained by Councilman Whitman. There was no need to do this, as commissioners serve at will. You've heard that repeatedly. You could have done it for any reason or no reason, but it was you who chose the dark path, the dark side. You chose it. Soon, at your beckoning, even high school students were testifying against him. Becky went ballistic, and even Councilwoman Lang, who said Mr. Starkweather was probably the best commissioner she ever worked with, bought into the false misogyny claim and voted to let Jeff step down. You must be proud, Mayor. I've been interested in politics most of my life, but I was truly surprised when the peace and love lady proved that politics can be a blood sport. I know you don't need my approval, but I will never forgive you for doing this. Never. Vote please to keep Mr. Starkweather on the commission. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, John. Next, we have Hannah Turner, then Renee Roth, then Nora Harold.
Hello, Hannah. I want to start by saying I'm a gender studies major, and I am here to comment on the language that is being used. I am not well versed in the situation pertaining to Mr. Starkweather, and I am not here to say whether or not he should stay or be removed. But I can speak on his language as it pertains to our society's view on men and women. The language used to describe women has become normalized in our society today. So normalized that it's almost never called into question because it's not seen as vulgar or offensive. It's seen as expected or natural. It's a reflection on how we view men and women as separate beings, greater than and less than. This hierarchy is defended as human nature. So when this language gets used, it becomes a dog whistle in that the only ones that can hear it are the ones affected by it, the ones that hear the constant message that we are less than, because we know the hierarchy is not human nature, but a construct made to uphold power. We need to keep calling this language out and keep these conversations going in order to change the narrative of what is seen as normal and natural in our society today. Thank you so much.
Excuse
Thank
me,
you, Hannah.
I have a quick
Oh, yes.
comment. I just, yes, so many years ago, I studied language, and I studied language in use. And certainly, I don't know if you know Robin Lakoff, but she was one of the first linguists. Excuse me, I do have a question, so if you could allow me to make a statement, I would be much appreciated. The point being that language is, so I don't know if you heard when Judy Nelson, who is, she's well known in the community, and she called in to say, and this is, I just think we need to note this because this is political language as well, that the Democratic Party in its charter, in order to be fair and equitable across a range. So men and women, they have to have a certain.
Councilmember Earl, I'm going to ask you to hold your comments until discussion. This is public comment, the time for public to comment. It's really not the time for you to get into a conversation or give someone who's making a statement a lecture.
I'm just asking her if she heard Judy Nelson. Okay, excuse me.
Okay, thank you, Hannah.
As
Councilmember Whitman? Yep.
let me just make a comment. As Matt Summers let us know in a recent meeting, anybody who comes up and gives a comment, if you're through talking, you don't need to sit and listen to somebody, try to refute what you said. You can walk away.
Okay. Next, we have Renee Roth, then Nora Harold, and then William Wyrick.
Hello, members of the council and staff. My name is Renee Roth. I honestly really don't want to be here tonight. I wish I wasn't standing here. But I do feel that we are at a crossroads and a moment that I believe has immense significance. The choices made by Mayor Sticks +2 tonight tell the story about how we work together. And they also tell the story about how we talk to each other, or we don't talk to each other. Betsy, will your tenure as mayor reinforce a troubling trend that we see in our town that favors allies and supporters, or will it usher in a new era of collaboration? I mentioned to my daughter Allegra, who is a student of yours, a bit about what was going on here at City Hall. And she asked me, have you talked with Betsy? She said, I wish you could sit down together and talk this out and stop the us versus them. Now, my daughter's 31 years old. She went to Berkeley. She's very eloquent and smart, but that really stuck with me. I wish we could learn to sit down and talk together and talk to each other. So we are a very diverse community with many different points of view. I'm going to run through this. I once believed that through collaboration and the support of fresh ideas, we could propel our community towards a unique, equitable, and prosperous tomorrow. However, my concerns have grown with each instance of dissent and division that I see. And I'd just like to close today by quoting from Rachel Lang, who had an article in the paper back in March, and it was called A Time to Heal the City. And it stuck with me, because this is what we're here for tonight. I have been disheartened by the threads of division that aim to pull us apart. You also said there are so many things we can do when we come together. And in closing, my intention for the next 4 years is to heal this division and get to work in raising our community so that we as individuals and as a collective can realize our potential and be a shining light for others to see. Those are inspiring words.
Thank you, Renee.
So join me in holding that intention.
Thank you.
And let's come together to make it happen.
Next,
Thank
we
you,
have
Rachel.
Nora Harold, then William Wyrick, and then Drew Mashburn.
Bye, Leslie. Hey, Nora, how's it going? Good, how are you? Good, I'm not casting spells on you, by the way. Oh, I appreciate that, thank you. Hi, everyone. Right? I mean, what the F? Here we are. Okay, this started, from my perspective, with a horrible campaign run against Mayor Sticks. And actions have consequences. Jeffrey Starkweather used misogyny to try to unseat Mayor Sticks and to try to put a slate of candidates that he preferred in office. He lost. You lost, Jeffrey. You lost this one. To then come in and threaten to sue the city is indicative of why he should go. He is not a healing force. He is a divisive force. He cares, from my perspective, this is my viewpoint, about him and the power he can grab. That's it. I have examples here of misogynistic statements I heard him make, and let me say this. Any misogynist will say, I'm not a misogynist. Here's the thing, I've said misogynistic statements throughout my life. We all have. We've all said probably racist things, we've said homophobic things, but this misogyny was used for political purposes. This is politics, and there's a consequence. Examples, the "She Just Said No" ad in the 2022 campaign about Mayor Sticks. "She just said no" is language created by women about sexual abuse. For Jeffrey Starkweather to turn that and use that against our sitting mayor is misogynistic, period, okay? These shame signs being held up about Mayor Sticks, the repeated calling of Mayor Sticks by her first name, Betsy, 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 all misogyny, right? The weak young female candidate comment. And let's not even talk about the ageism that's in that statement, right? We want our young people involved. We want young people in politics. We need them. We need you. I don't know how old you are, Rachel. I know, right? I know, and I thought about that too. I'm like, what is even your age? You just look fantastic, right? You know, the final thing, I'm going to run out of time, is the stuff that was just put up on Facebook, the Anson Williams statement. It was put up by the Ojai Valley Democrat Club on Facebook. I'm going to keep going. It is
Out of equity, Nora. I have to cut you off. I'm sorry.
abusive.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, he needs to go.
Next, we have William Wyrick, then Drew Mashburn, then Dee Reed.
I'm going to try to change gears a little bit here. I want to bring up, I was thinking about what to bring up as a dimension from my experience that maybe hasn't been considered, so I'll give it a shot. I'm concerned that Ojai is getting the attention for the wrong reasons at various levels of state government. And this has consequences. And in fact, if you, I'm going to give two examples. The Ojai Valley Sanitation District, when it refused to comply with state law about capacity charges, got sanctioned by the HCD, Housing and Community Development, saying you cannot charge the same capacity charge for a 10,000 square foot mansion as for a 1,500 foot ADU. And they were forced to change under threat of sanction, taking away some of their local discretion. We know what happened to the Ojai Valley, the Ojai Unified School District. They got on the state's radar and got rated as the worst managed, financially managed school district in the state. Took away some of their local discretion. I'm concerned that we're getting on the list of communities that systematically block, reduce opportunities for expanding affordable and workforce housing. And that's going to grab the attention of these regulatory agencies and take away our local discretion. We have a situation with Cabrillo that looks like Cabrillo is saying, you know, no, we can't accept your interpretation because that takes away our ability to perform regulatory, the priorities from Sacramento at any jurisdiction. We have the situation, of course, with the Becker Agreement that is well known. And the very fact that this is a special meeting focused on someone that is identified with affordable and workforce housing, whether that's valid or not, I'm not, but the point is it becomes a pattern, concerns me. Concerns me that we're going to get on the wrong list, on the radar of the wrong reasons for the regulatory agencies, and I want to remind you that HCD is the only state regulatory agency that can sanction cities for general plan issues. So I just think we need to, the very fact that this was called as a special meeting unfortunately fits that pattern of perhaps getting the wrong kind of attention for this city. We don't need, and the last thing we want to do is to engage in internal political considerations only that ends up having consequences of losing our discretion over our land use policies, which is essential for maintaining and protecting the character of this community. Just want to bring in that dimension for consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. And just a note to the public, our housing, just passed. Yeah, element, yeah. Our housing element just passed through HCD, so that's great news for the entire town, so.
Just a quick,
Yep.
it's provisionally passed.
Next, we have Drew Mashburn, then Dee Reed, then Carol Smith.
As stated, I'm Drew Mashburn, and good evening, everybody. Today, I went more than once on the official website for the city of Ojai in order to reach the comments as of 12, in quotes, that contain all the letters in regards to proposed removal of Jeffrey Starkweather from the Planning Commission. The last I checked, there were quite a few more letters for removing Commissioner Starkweather than for retaining him.
Audience to stop talking, please. It's hard to hear.
Regardless of how you vote this evening, I hope many others will take the time to read all those letters. It is quite unfortunate that the wording of the motion made by Council Member Whitman at the July 11th, 2023 meeting led to confusion as to what the motion really meant. To me, it was obvious. It was to remove Mr. Starkweather from the commission, but allow him to save face gracefully by stepping down and terminating his position on his own. He failed to do so, and here we are, still wasting everybody's time instead of lending our time to more urgent matters. I was unable to attend the July 11th, 2023 City Council meeting, just like Mr. Starkweather. That was the meeting that first proposed the removing of him. Yes, I wrote a letter for presentation to the City Council that evening, or yet I did. I asked my friend Becky to read it during the hands-up Zoom portion of the meeting. Becky graciously did so. If you don't recall what I stated through Becky, then please go to about 3 hours, 18 minutes, 32 seconds, and the point of the YouTube video of the meeting where Becky began reading my speech. I'm not going to spend time here stating my reasons again for my request to you that you remove Mr. Starkweather from the Planning Commission. I've informed you that most of the letters presently on the official site are in favor of removing Mr. Starkweather from the Planning Commission. I don't disagree with any portions of any of them. Mayor Sticks frequently states at city council meetings that if one agrees with the previous speaker during the public comments, that they simply say ditto in order to save time. I'm really tired of Mr. Starkweather wasting everybody's time on this issue. So ditto from me. Nice flowers.
Thank you, Drew. Next, we have Dee Reed, then Carol Smith, then Anita Cram.
I'm noticing that a lot of the people who are speaking were missing just about every other word. So I don't know if you have to get real close. Can everybody hear all my words? Okay. It is hard to believe that we're still here discussing the removal of Jeffrey Starkweather from the Planning Commission. The mayor says the city can legally remove him for no reason because he's an at-will appointment. And that would be correct in ordinary times. But we've gotten well past ordinary here in Ojai. Here are the problems as I see them. First, it would be, as Susan Francina alluded to, it would be unprecedented to remove a commissioner in midterm, especially for no reason. And no one alive today can remember it ever being done in Ojai. I realize it's been done elsewhere, but people have asked for weeks, and we haven't come up with any examples. Second, we all know it's not really for no reason. We can't simply erase the disgraceful display that took place over 2 recent council meetings, the first while we were out of the country. What jumped out for me was the reckless disregard for the truth. That's a legal definition for defamation when you're trying to defame a public figure. You have to at least first check to see if what you're saying is true. Step 1, speak directly to the person you're trying to defame. To date, no one from the city has ever spoken directly with Jeffrey in person about this matter as they're trying to act against him. Third, Councilmember Whitman finally let the real cat out of the bag when he admitted he simply doesn't want a political activist on the Planning Commission, even if the activism does not conflict with the role of the Planning Commission or any of its guidelines. It seems that Jeffrey's public comments about the crying need for affordable housing, have irritated Mayor Sticks and Councilman Whitman. Well, that's too bad, because Jeffrey, like all of us, has a First Amendment right to speak out on important matters in his role as a private citizen. Most important, removing Jeffrey from the Planning Commission would have a chilling effect on the kinds of local citizens you would want to serve on any of our commissions. People like Jeffrey who have relevant professional knowledge or life experiences, who love Ojai and want to give back to the community through public service. I'm thinking about the nearly 36 women who signed their names to a public comment urging the council to keep Jeffrey on the Planning Commission. And sadly, I'm also recalling a few others we spoke with who definitely support Jeffrey and are grateful for his service on the commission and his public advocacy for affordable housing, but they told us they just could not speak publicly at this time because they fear political retaliation. Whoa, it's already getting chilly in here, isn't it? So you can vote to remove Jeffrey and risk possible costly litigation for defamation or First Amendment, or you can let him stay on the Planning Commission and send a more positive message that you welcome a robust discussion of all ideas, especially from current and future potential members of our public boards. You might just uncover a future Ojai living treasure.
Next we have Carol Smith, then Anita Cram, and then Jeffrey Starkweather.
Good evening, council, staff, people in the audience. Please ask people what their name is when they come up to the stand, and please ask them where they live if they don't want to give their whole address. I mean, I live at 23 Terminal Lane. At least they should say, I live in the city of Ojai, which means they vote for you, or they live in the county or whatever. I don't understand why that is not done. These are the people who can vote for you. Those are your constituents. Don't you want to know if they live in the city? Oh, this is at least the 4th time I've asked. Planning commissioners, we do want certain skills from planning commissions. We want architects, we want landscapers, we want builders. All people who know something about building and planning. Those are preferred candidates for our planning commission. And generally, I think that's a good idea. Whether we want to go down to being appointed by the current council, that could be fine too, but does that mean they have to live in the tiny little district that Sacramento is saying we have to do? I mean, that's so stupid. You know, I feel like we're being bullied into that, considering the size of our city. Go back to Jeffrey Starkweather's situation. I think that when Mr. Starkweather used the term weak young women, weak is fairly common in political terms, in terms of being a weak candidate. He could easily have also been a weak young man. I'm not saying he should. It was not great that he used those words, but he by no means did he mean it weak as women are weak or they're misogynists. That just did not happen. Don't you think that Councilwoman Rule or Councilman Francina, if they had any thought that Mr. Starkweather is a misogynist, that they would have allowed him to continue, they would have him fired. And you'd have 4 women and 1 man say, you're out. There's no way that those 2 women would tolerate someone who's actually a misogynist. So I would like to not spend more city council time on this, make a vote tonight. I hope you vote that he stays. We have never, as I said, fired a commissioner except for poor attendance and I think moving away or something like that. And he's hardworking. He writes a lot to everybody, not just the city council. And I think he should finish his term. Thank you so much for service.
Thank you, Carol. Next and just a question to the city attorney. From what I understand, we cannot require people to say whether they live in the city or not.
Right, we can ask, and then people can choose to answer or not answer.
Okay, thank you. Next, we have Anita Cram, then we have Jeffrey Starkweather, and then Santiago Rizzo.
Good evening, everyone. Jeffrey Starkweather has breached my trust, as he has done with every community member that votes. The Democratic Club website says, open quotes, Ojai Dems hosts Democratic Candidate Forum August 18th, this is 2022, at Kent Hall. Close quote, open quote, this is part of the club's official candidate endorsement process, close quote, open quote. Club members are invited to a special club membership meeting Sunday, August 21st at Kent Hall starting at 6 p.m. to vote on endorsements, close quote. Open quote. If you have questions about the process or the forum, contact Club President Jeffrey Starkweather, close quote. Close quote. And then comes the email on Wednesday, August 10th, 2022 from Jeffrey Starkweather to apparently other Democratic Club members, I have no idea. As I said in the previous meeting, that email says, open quote, the last 3 days getting candidate questionnaire out for the Dem Club and frantically recruiting candidates to fill our slate. There's a typo in the email. I think we have it now, close quote. And those were Renee Roth, Leslie Rule, Randy Haney, Anson Williams. Open quote, there is a chance we will have a majority trustee board and city council we can work with, and while we'll need our policy expertise and input, Bill's idea of expert panels works well here, close quote. Open quote, I agree we need to go into a hiatus until after the election, close quote. So what was happening here is they had decided prior to the debate that they were going to vote on afterwards. They'd already decided who they were going to endorse and who their candidates were going to be. I cannot trust him. I cannot trust him in a policy decision-making position on the Planning Commission. I have no idea what he's doing behind the scenes. No one does. And apparently, this is probably his modus operandi. He did it in a thing as big as our Democratic election. Now, how do they get away with that? That the website says, we will vote on the 21st, but on the 10th, they've already decided at the behest of Jeffrey Starkweather, who had submitted questionnaires to the candidates and made a decision and made that recommendation that they all agreed on. And this whole expert panel thing, what were they going to do? Come in and add a whole nother layer of government that was kind of make city council a little bit mute, because these expert panels were going to, help these candidates that if their slate had won, we're going to need policy expertise. There's no room for this in our community. I ask you please to remove him. None of us can trust him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Anita. Next, we have Jeffrey Starkweather, then Santiago Rizzo, then Teal Rowe.
I would like a little more time because I just heard an incredibly false accusation. That email was to 5 people, Andrew's brother, on a nonprofit, none of whom are Democratic Club members. None of them. They'd asked me my assessment of the candidates. And this is the job of Democratic clubs all over the state. I constantly was being given information from the state, the county. Are you out recruiting candidates? And we always try to get competition in our races. Secondly, I don't decide the endorsement. Susan was there. She got a vote. We had an open process. I invited everybody to come. When Mr. Whitman spoke here at a city council, I walked up to him, handed my card, and said, why don't you come and talk to me about the election? He never did. I invited all the candidates to speak. We had an open forum that was listened to by all of our members, not by just me. And then we went in and had a vote. And Rachel knows I encouraged her to come. She couldn't make it. Michelle Pinero, who wasn't one of the people that I originally said, she came and did compete, and she did a good job. So it is the job of a president and every political person to make an assessment of the candidates. And that's what I was doing. And also, yes, we do run slates. Just like simply Ojai went behind closed doors and put together their slate. Just like they recruited Mr. Whitman when he said that the Emergency Climate Committee recruited you. You said that at a public forum.
Yeah.
Okay? That's a secret group. They never met in public. We were a public group. So this is complete BS. And, by the way, talking to our attorney, this is classic political speech. Now, I just want to point out, because to talk about whether I opposed any policies of the city, I challenge any of you to find a single policy of this city that I've opposed. A single one. Number two, when the city council is considering making an ordinance, it's not a policy. And people have a right as citizens to have input. Third, as a planning commissioner, I have never spoke in public about anything that was going to be for our planning commission. Rachel heard a false accusation against me, that I went before the city council and argued against the REACH code and the rent stabilization. I never argued against it. That is not a true statement. I raised questions about it. I specifically I sent them to Rachel. It says I support both of these. But I actually went to excuse me, let me finish.
Okay,
I'm the one who's being accused here. I'd like to be able to finish.
Okay, let's give one more minute.
I would like to request, since Anita and many other people still base their opinion of Jeffrey on what they read in your original statement referencing that letter, that this 3 minutes counts just so that he can explain that once and for all. I think he deserves at least 3 minutes to address the accusations.
Okay, let's stay quiet, please. No outbursts. All right, just one moment, please. Can we have silence? So, council, would you like?
Yes.
Okay. 3 more minutes? Okay. Two more minutes?
3 minutes, for the love of God.
So on that one statement, if someone made a correct statement, weak politically, and that's what my assessment was, has to do with their electoral strength. That's what I was looking at. Every political advisor, every candidate does that. The second thing, this whole thing about misogyny in the mayor, first of all, I never said a single negative word about Mr. Whitman or Mr. Lang during that campaign. No negative campaign at all. I never even talked about you guys. We talked about our slate. However, in the mayor, she had promised things. We went through vote by vote, and that's all we did, how she had not lived up to her promises. That is the job of a political party, to hold people accountable for what they run on. And that was all that was about. Getting back to the policy and being a planning commissioner, it is the policy of this city, its housing element. 18 of those 19 steps, action steps, are the responsibility of the Planning Commission. I have vigorously advocated for us carrying out those action steps. And that is not antithetical to our policy. In fact, it's a support of our policy. Yes, I have been an advocate for affordable housing, but I don't ever bring any politics, any policy into the Planning Commission. We've only had 3 issues where we made recommendations about policy. And the one case, which the rent control and the REACH code were not about, because I checked to find out this is not something we're ever going to review. I wanted to be sure, because I don't want to be speaking out in advance. Unlike the mayor, excuse me, who goes out and speaks in advance of legislation, which you can legally do. I'm not saying you can't. I don't think it's proper. I think you should stay neutral and wait till you hear from people. When the formula business ordinance came up, I went to a meeting, public meeting, and I made sure I did not say anything for or against it, even though I could, because it's legislation. Because I knew that I wanted everybody who came to that planning board meeting, who was either for it or against it, saw me as a neutral, unbiased person that would listen to the evidence. So there is nothing in my experience that has been against the city or been antithetical to the city. I think the case that was referred to there, the particular person who was anti-homosexual, he was actually speaking as a member of that commission. I've never done that. So
Thank
I
you,
hate
Jeffrey.
to say that I would consider suing, but I will
Okay.
if this comes about. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeffrey. I'm just curious, what legislation did I talk about? You referred to?
Reach Code, you sent out an email, which I saw, asking people to come and support a clean Reach Code before we'd had a public hearing.
I'm not sure about that, but
Yes, I've seen it. Somebody has forwarded it to me. You know how these stupid emails
Okay,
get
but
around.
I don't want to argue.
I mean, you have a right to do that.
Thank you. Next, we have Santiago Rizzo, then we have Teal Rowe, then we have Jody Murphy.
Hello, everyone. Hi. I'm a citizen here. I live with my partner. She works at the hospital. A lot of tension in this room. Never been in one of these rooms. Last time I was in a city council room was in Berkeley, where my teacher had a baseball field named in his honor, and they voted on a bond. That was 11 years ago. And one thing, my partner and I have been through a lot, and we struggle at times, and forgiveness is really important for all relationships. And if we don't learn forgiveness, then no matter what happens tonight, I hope there can be forgiveness, because our country is in some serious trouble, as is the world, if we don't learn how to forgive. Black people have a lot of reason not to forgive. So do the indigenous. So do so do the Jewish. We all have reasons not to forgive, and we need to go into our heart and reconnect with nature, which is why we moved here to Ojai, and learn to let go of our tension and resentment and hate and bring it to Spirit, God, Earth, which is why we're here. I came to thank you guys. My partner and I, we went to the compost area this weekend and saw the homeless in the camps or the tents there. And it's a really peaceful space for them. A lot of the people that we spoke to grew up in the city and through really bad circumstances are homeless now. One of them lost his house during a volcano in Hawaii. Another one, so thank you for that space, and I hope we can do more, because there's a lot of people in this community that have a lot of resources, and I hope we can change the culture to inspire them to give more now, because there's land to build, and I hope we can do that. The other thing I wanted to mention is, I try and live my example of global warming is a big issue for me, and I try and ride my bike as much as possible. It's a little thing that I can do, and I went on my bike the other day, and I wanted to share the story. I don't think I'm going to have enough time, but to the river, and I go there to cleanse and pray as much as I can, and I rode my bike back and decided to go to the store to get some ice cream and some other things for Courtney, and I was riding my bike back with 2 bags on both sides at nighttime, and a police officer came and shined their bright lights on me, and I said, "Wow, that's pretty aggressive." And I kept going, and then I was walking and posting something on Instagram, and I'm on my bike, and she flashes the light on me again and asks, "What are you doing riding against traffic?" and very aggressive. I don't think that's the approach. I looked homeless. I didn't look as sharp as I may now, but, and that's, we really need to practice more kindness, especially to those that are struggling the most right now. If not, they have more resentment, and then we have things to fear. And I just wanted to highlight that our approach, especially to those who are on the street right now and are struggling, should be with more empathy and more kindness right now. So thank you very much for letting me speak.
Thank you, Santiago. Next, we have Teal Rowe, then Judy Murphy. Those are all the...
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'd like to thank you for having this special meeting tonight and the time that it takes to do the process. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate you, Mark Scott, for canceling that Planning Commission meeting. I know it's just messing the process up, but I'm sure it could go really smoothly. So I appreciate you, and I appreciate all of you and your time. My opinion is based on watching almost every single Planning Commission meeting that Jeffrey Starkweather was in. and I support the removal of Jeffrey Starkweather. I supported it on January 11th. That was the night of the meeting. Somebody keeps saying the 24th, but it was January 11th that we were all here.
Lie.
July. Oh yeah, 6 months ago, that's where I'm living. So it's really hard to take the slams, to hear them, and the division. I know that's going on. And you know what? I was born in this town, and I believe this town thrives on division. It really does. So there's also ways to fold the community in, because that's what Ojai, I believe, is and has been most of my life until recently. And I went back to look for the video that Steve Bennett, State Assemblyman Steve Bennett, was recorded at the Democratic Club. And he was asked about housing, and I can't find that video anywhere. I would really love to send it in to you, because when he was asked about housing, he said, you fold your community in. You don't need to build, you fold your community in, you take in where you need to take in. And I know that is Ojai, and that's what we do. So the things that Sherry and Kate said in public comment, they're also in your letter that she sent, the letters that she sent one in it that makes a lot of sense to me, what she said, as does a lot of what other people have said tonight. I do support the removal of Jeffrey Starkweather from the Planning Commission. In fact, honestly, I'd like to see the entire Planning Commission go away. Thank you.
Thank you, Teal. Next, we have Judy Murphy, then Mary Medeiros, and then Leslie Hess.
Oh, wow, what timing, huh? Good evening, council members, staff. I have to confess, I'm a planning commissioner member and really don't want to be tossed out. I would like to first ditto what our chair, Mr. Quillisi, said. I thought he was eloquent, and I agree with everything he said. I really am just up here to ask you one question, and that is why? The mayor's famous July 11th letter listed 2 reasons to remove Jeffrey. Both have been shown to be false. There are rumors about why he's being removed. One is that he is this affordable housing advocate. I hope that's not your reason. The second rumor is that Mr. Starkweather supported some of your opponents in the last election. I certainly hope that's not your reason to remove him. Now, this evening, our attorney and Mr. Scott have explained that you don't have to have a reason to remove him. But again, I think you do. I ask you, why are we doing this? 3 meetings to discuss the removal of one planning commissioner? It seems to me to be a big waste of time, especially when Mr. Starkweather has been a very effective commissioner. I sit next to him. I have listened to every word out of his mouth, and he is very good. I hope you don't remove him. Thank you.
Thank you, Judy. Next, we have Mary Medeiros, then Leslie Hess.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. I'm Mary Medeiros. I do live in Ojai. So I'm an observer, and I observe character, and I think character is really important besides facts, which I would hope that everyone cares about. Facts. Okay, so my understanding is that it was not Mayor Sticks who launched this huge assassination and whatever it's been called. That's my understanding, and I'm going to stick by it. I'm concerned, that last meeting, whatever, July 11th, whenever it was, I actually was hoping that tonight was going to be, that it would have assumed that everybody knew the points that were brought up. There were very important, concerning, and I don't know valid or not, but it seemed to be that, that supported the removal of Jeffrey Starkweather. But it seems like we didn't even get into any of that tonight. So, I've had a hard time because I could spend a half hour with all of the points that I know were made that I looked up and researched, but we don't have the time. So somebody had mentioned something about, well, when we have anything to say about him being removed, we should be commenting on personal experiences with him. What? Personal experiences? I don't know any of you personally, none of us do. We're running a city, we hope, together, and it has nothing to do, I have nothing personally against Mr. Starkweather, I don't know him, but I'm very concerned about him operating outside of the realm of his job. And there were many, many points brought up there, the last time, and I just really hope, without naming them all again, I have a few here, but, I don't know why we're not talking about those. And we shouldn't probably be here again. I agree with somebody that said that. I also have to just throw in that when someone had mentioned something about misogyny, I was watching Mr. Starkweather laughing. That was not cool. Be careful when you're in public, because people are watching.
Point of order. Point of order.
I have a right.
Please do, Mr. Clay, please be quiet or leave.
Excuse me, but I think I have a right to observe what everybody else probably saw. I don't think it was cool. Okay, there was one comment I do want to say, that April 25th, let's see if I can get this out, at a city council meeting, Mr. Starkweather, he didn't identify himself as speaking as a commissioner. He shared his memory at the public hearing on the cannabis lounge expansion. And he said, in quote, "I grew up here, graduated in high school in 1965, and this whole idea of racism and regulating drugs, we had a bust, and when I was in high school, and it was all Mexicans." And I don't know, I don't know. We should be concerned. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Excuse me, please be quiet or leave. Next we have Leslie Hess. Thank you, Chief Newman. Quiet, please. Okay, next we have Leslie Hess. And please practice decorum and be quiet and listen. Thank you.
Thank you, all of you, Matt, Mark, Andy, Sousa, Betsy, Rachel, Leslie, and Weston. My name is Leslie Hess. I live here in the city. I am on the board of directors of a nonprofit called Simply Ojai. I filed the records request on Mr. Starkweather because I got tired of being humiliated, lied about, and had misinformation spread about my nonprofit. I don't want it to go on anymore. He's been doing this for a year. It's now become the view of the paper. Many people in here believe in it, and it's untrue. We did not recruit anyone. Simply Ojai is not a shady political group. We are a small nonprofit. We don't have members, and we don't do anything shady. I am sad, dismayed, and shocked by the things that he says. I have the emails. I've seen what he says. It's pretty low, and it's untrue, and I want it to stop. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie.
Let me ask a question of Leslie, please.
Do you want to answer?
You can. I don't know. I'll ask the question. You can answer or not. You're a nonprofit.
Yes, 501c3 nonprofit.
So maybe I misunderstood. I thought nonprofits didn't get involved with political.
we are allowed to spend 25% of our income on legislation. That's different. You cannot back a politician, and we didn't do that. As a person, I am allowed to support Betsy. I'm allowed to be her assistant treasurer. It's perfectly fine. Simply Ojai didn't do that. They didn't back candidates. There is no Simply Ojai. There are 3 people on the board and a couple of volunteers.
So I'm not understanding. I thought Simply Ojai sued the city.
Okay, that's not, that's something else. Now, how are you connecting? No, actually, simply, no, that's legislation. Yeah, no, that's yeah, that's. What?
I'd like to speak with you personally.
Okay, me too.
Because I don't understand a lot of things. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we are complete with public comment. We have some on Zoom, Weston?
Yes, Mayor, we have 3 raised hands so far. First we'll have Becky, followed by Carolyn, and then Joel. Becky, you have the floor.
Thank you, Weston. Good evening, everyone. Becky Windenwood. Mayor and Council, I am asking you again to please vote decisively tonight to remove Jeffrey Starkweather from the Planning Commission, effective immediately. The fact that Starkweather did not gracefully step down after your previous vote, but apparently threatened the city with legal action if he was not allowed to stay, demonstrates his entitled, combative, power-hungry personality, which is not conducive to effective collaboration with the City Council, nor to the overall well-being of the citizens of Ojai. In the case of all but council member rule, voters elected you based on your pro-Ojai Valley values you espoused and campaign positions you expressed. Those values and positions are exactly the opposite of Starkweather's, in part because Starkweather was a last-minute appointee to the Planning Commission by former council member Wyrick. As a holdover from the previous council, he does not represent the values and aims of those who voted for you and whose trust you must continually earn. At the July 11th meeting, a large number of gentlewomen and men, many of whom had never shown up nor spoken at a council meeting, were so upset by Starkweather's comments that they felt compelled to attend the meeting and to speak. However, at the following meeting, when Starkweather believed he was safe from removal, he never acknowledged those people's concerns, nor apologized for any misunderstanding or hurt he had caused. Rather, he trotted triumphantly back to his seat, past many of the same people, pumping his fist in victory. That gesture said a lot, such as that to him, Ojai is a game that he must win, no matter how he must do it, no matter who or what he must harm in order to grasp and hold power over the citizens and city council, rather than power with the citizens and city council. It was also a slap in the face to all who had taken exception to his statements. If you fail to remove him tonight, you are also slapping those same people in the face and dismissing their very real concerns. You will also be dismissing the many people who have written to you prior to tonight's meeting, giving their reasons for his removal, whose letters include additional examples of his misogyny, yes, his misogyny, also demonstrated just a few moments ago, racism, disdain for the homeless, and other odious attitudes and behaviors. Jeffrey Starkweather's presence has only brought dissension and grief to the Ojai Valley. He is not a respectful collaborator, but a non-elected, non-resident who wants to have his own way, no matter what the cost to the whole. Please vote to remove him tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Becky.
Next we have Carolyn Vondriska, followed by Joel, and then Catherine Donwin. Carolyn, you have the floor. Carolyn, we'll give you one more chance to unmute.
Can you hear me now? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Sticks, City Council, and City staff. Mr. Scott, welcome to Ojai. Thank you for helping our town. You certainly have your work cut out for you. I'm sorry I can't be there in person tonight, but I appreciate the opportunity to weigh in. As a threshold matter, I'd like to thank the city attorney for clarifying that the written and oral input from the July 11th meeting will be fully considered as if given here tonight. There was a lot of input from our community at that meeting. I reread and rewatched all of that over the weekend, and by my tally, it was about 3-1 in favor of removal for a variety of reasons. To me, of our overarching concern is the conflict that exists between the various roles Mr. Starkweather plays in our community. The board and commission member handbook requires commissioners in Ojai to, quote, consider the overall public good, not the exclusive point of view of a sole group or interest, end quote. Planning commissioners make land use decisions. Such decision-making is an area that significantly affects Ojai in a permanent way, including traffic, air quality, water, and other environmental impacts, the size of our population, and how our limited building space is used. It is crucial that such decisions be made as required by the handbook. In my opinion, Mr. Starkweather's zealous advocacy as president of the Ojai Valley Democratic Club on land use matters prevents him from fulfilling his obligations as a planning commissioner to look out for the overall public good. Indeed, the developer-led model of housing that Mr. Starkweather supports creates developments that are overwhelmingly market rate for those who can afford them, but does little for the low-income renters such developments purport to help. This is why, and to your point, Teal, Assembly Member Steve Bennett, a Democrat who represents our community in Sacramento, has made clear that this model is a false solution because it consumes available building sites with expensive housing that should be prioritized instead for the truly and permanently affordable housing that communities need. While I fully support Mr. Starkweather's right to advocate tirelessly for the housing solutions he personally thinks are good for Ojai, I do not feel that he can be at the helm of such advocacy while also serving on our planning commission. The board and commission member handbook further requires that commissioners, quote, respect an individual's viewpoint, even though it may be different from your own, end quote. I have observed Mr. Starkweather vilify public and private individuals who disagree with him on the housing model he endorses. This is not appropriate for an appointee of the city council. Moreover, the handbook further requires that individual opinions must be identified as such. I have never heard Mr. Starkweather clarify that his input to the city council or to any other decision-making body is his personal opinion. Having to decipher whether he is speaking as an individual, as president of the Democratic Club, as traffic committee member, as housing committee member, or as planning commissioner causes preventable confusion in our community. Please vote to remove him. Thank you.
Thank you, Carolyn.
Next, we have Joel, followed by Catherine Donwin. Joel, you have the floor.
Jeffrey Starkweather is unfit for his role on the Ojai Planning Commission. This becomes vividly clear when Starkweather's behavior is viewed through the prism of the Ojai City Board and Commission Member Handbook. The handbook sets out certain codes of conduct, many of which Starkweather routinely violates or fails to live up to. Starkweather publicly and repeatedly makes false statements about the policies, achievements, and intentions of the Ojai City Council. He conducts public workshops in which he falsely claims are sponsored by the Ojai City Planning Commission. He aggressively and manically works to dominate our local political boards. He's on the Ojai Democratic Club. He's a member of the Planning Commission, a member of the Traffic Committee, a treasurer for the Ventura County Democratic Club. I think he also ran for the school board. This sets up a web of conflicts of interest and a confusion for people who listen to what this guy says. But of course, when he's confronted with everything, he always goes to the excuse that he's speaking as a private citizen. More importantly, he issues false statements about the motivations of our elected leaders and fabricates violations and felonies supposedly committed by those same leaders. He treats the city staff as his own personal fiefdom, there to research his own notions and validate his own policy goals. He also, as we've discussed, denigrates Ojai women. But I won't get into the famous or infamous 3 or 4 word phrase he's known for. He calls our mayor a puppet, stupid, somebody who's easily swayed. These are all violations of codes of conduct and civility of a piece, flowing from his ridiculous deluge of emails, opinion pieces, and public statements. His public pronouncements are studded with baseless accusations and lies, and his characteristic othering of his opponents, as if they, or I should say, as if we, weren't caring human beings, but, to use a phrase he likes, neo-Marxists. I'd also like to bring up the idea of AutoZone. Jeffrey and Dee, I think it's time to come clean about what your relationship is with AutoZone. Are you representing them? Are you working on AutoZone's behalf, or somebody?
Joel, I can't understand you. What are you saying? What was that word you used? It sounded like Auroville. What? What's an AutoZone?
Car parts company.
Ask Jeffrey Starkweather.
Let's go ahead.
Let him finish his comment.
Let's go ahead.
If we can't understand the speaker, we have to speak up and say so, and his words were garbled to me.
You want to go ahead and finish, Joel, and then if there are any questions, we can.
Yeah, what is his relationship with AutoZone? Is he representing AutoZone? Are he and his wife in bed with AutoZone, or AutoZone franchisee? And is his relationship with AutoZone reflected in his 700 form, in which he's supposed to reveal and release his potential conflicts of interest?
Excuse me, Mr. Starkweather, could we let the speaker finish first? Could you sit down, please? Joel,
I'll call you.
excuse me. Joel, are you finished with your comment? Because some time was taken up, so if you want to make any other, or is he gone?
Can I finish?
Yes, please. Joel, you want to finish?
Yes. Ojai, in spite of Starkweather's best efforts, is a community of neighbors and friends, newcomers and longtimers. We're all bound by a passion and a love for Ojai. Our guiding values are compassion, collaboration, and creativity. We welcome difference, we thrive on being different, and we thrive on difference. We deserve a planning commission whose commissioners reflect the vision and policies of our elected officials.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Next, we have Catherine Donwan,
Okay,
followed
we
by
have
Dee
a-
Dee Dorskin.
Yeah, Mayor Sticks.
I was accused of something.
Just a minute, let me, Council, could you put your hand down, Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah.
please?
My suggestion is if he wants to respond to the question or assertion that he has some relationship with AutoZone, that he be allowed to make a response to that.
Okay.
Okay, I just didn't want to open up a.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Starkweather.
Well, we have no relationship. I don't even know where that could possibly come from. I'm retired. My wife is retired. We don't work for anybody. I get no money from anything but retirement. I own no property in the city. I have no business. I don't get paid as a planning commissioner. I don't get paid as a Democratic chair. So I don't know where this is. Is this some internet conspiracy? It's just crazy, really. Thank you.
Okay. Next question.
Next, we have Catherine Donwan, followed by Dee Dee Dorskind. Catherine, you have the floor.
Hi, quiet,
good
please.
evening. Good
Please
evening.
proceed, Catherine.
Thank you. So I just wanted to, kind of point out and highlight some of the ironies and double standards of this whole process. I find it extremely ironic that initially the purpose of discussing removal of a planning commissioner was because of a waste of staff time. We are now multiple days into this, and it just seems to be going nowhere. I find that there is a double standard regarding the whole election process of last year and how it seems fine for some camps to identify the candidates that they would be running with versus an organization who has a right to endorse candidates is being vilified for doing that. And that just seems like a double standard. To to me. The Dems Club attempted to reach out to me when I was running. The other group did not. So to say that one was doing that over the other. And then I would also just like to draw attention to Simply Ojai's website as of right now. Quote, "The most effective thing the Ojai City Council can do to protect Ojai renters from crushing market forces is to enact rent stabilization that applies to rental units in our town where it is allowed under current state law," end quote. Additionally, greetings, Ojai Mayor Betsy Sticks and City Council members Souza Francina, Rachel Lang, Leslie Rowe, and Andrew Whitman. As Ojai continues, let's fast forward. We, the undersigned, respectfully request that the Ojai City Council enact a strong rent stabilization and a no-fault eviction protection ordinance that will afford members of our community that do not own their home but pay their rent on time and follow the rules a better chance at remaining in Ojai for the long term. So I think it's unfair to say that that group is not politically affiliated. So let's just make sure that we all have all of the facts when we're discussing these things. And let's not try to vilify one group over another, but look at the true facts and really see, take that into consideration. Additionally, it's my understanding that planning commissioners do not create policy, but enforce it. And additionally, I feel like there's been awarded a lot of power to one particular commissioner when there are 5 commissioners in that group. So I don't think one has ultimate power over the others. So just things to take into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you, Catherine.
Last raised hand we have is Dee Dee Dorskin. Dee Dee, you have the floor.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Mayor Sticks and City Council and Mark. Welcome aboard, Mark. I'm sure you have never seen anything quite like this amazing City Council. I'm going to direct my attention tonight on Rachel because I am very proud of you, Rachel. I met you and I really feel that you have been put in a position of harm for your self-being. And I'm sure that you can see the divisiveness in this city. And I hope you stick with whatever's in your heart as an individual and stand up for yourself because you should be proud of who you are. That's A. B is, I'd like to make a comment about misogyny because I find it so offensive that this has gone on and on about Jeffrey. And we have a city council member that has spoken to other of his fellow city council members in a misogynistic way. And we have all witnessed what you have done. And for people that are saying that Jeffrey, because he wrote an email and it had nothing to do with sex, it had to do with the candidates that were slated. And then to have to sit and look at one of our council members that has treated and disrespect to fellow city council members is appalling. And Simply Ojai, you are suing the city. You are taking our tax dollars to fight you. You should not even be allowed to speak to us. You should be humiliated. Leslie Haas, you should be ashamed of yourself. And don't say that we talk bad about Simply Ojai. You're in cahoots with Betsy Sticks and Sabrina Venkus, the attorney. Enough is enough. I hope that you guys will give the respect that Mark deserves to be your interim manager. God, I only wish he was the mayor. But you need to give him the respect he deserves because hopefully he will be able to take you all out of this hole. It's humiliating. Thank you.
Thank you, Dee Dee. Is that it, Weston?
No more raised hands on Zoom, Mayor.
All right, we will move on to discussion. Who would like to begin?
I'll begin.
Councilmember Rule.
Thank you. So I came in here, Mark Scott and I had a discussion today, and we talked about goodwill and honest intentions. And if there's one thing that I believe Jeffrey Starkweather embodies, is goodwill and honest intentions. He has never done anything that is behind, he's never done anything that hasn't been clear and obvious. And to me, really what's going on, the fact that he is so upset leads me to believe that after this third council meeting, what this city has put him through has just left me speechless. It has been defamation of character. That's changed because we no longer need to do it. My point being, I also wanted to mention, because he and I talked about rent stabilization, and we agreed that there was a much stronger rent stabilization that could have been implemented if we had taken time. One of that would have been to make those who were forced out of their homes eligible for SB 649, right on the list, which would have given them priority. We also talked about a transfer tax of over $1.25 million that would not $5,000, but $20,000. But we didn't have a chance to go into this. So my vote on rent stabilization and my guess on his, and I'm putting words in his mouth, was that this did not go far enough. We did not give it the thought that it needed. So those that think that he was against rent stabilization, or those who say that I was against rent stabilization, I was in fact for much stronger, much more considered rent stabilization factors. I would have given $20,000 to people who were forced out of their homes on over $1.25 million. I wanted to take the time to do that, but no one was willing to take the time to do that. The other thing is about the REACH code, what Jeffrey, and we talked about that as well, and I remember his comment, and what he was saying was, Berkeley is being sued. That was not information, by the way, that was shared with us, even though it was happening at the time. Nobody said to this council, Berkeley has a very similar REACH code and they're being sued. Perhaps it would be smart to stand back or not do a full REACH code and include restaurants. That was his point. So when you say that people are against things, it's oftentimes because they would like something stronger and better or more protective of the city. And those are the two conversations I had with him. And once again, I will say that in my experience with Jeffrey, and no, I did not know him before I had qualified to run and was running, never met him, as has been alleged many times by people on this council. If there is anyone in this town who has shown goodwill and honest intentions to talk things out and figure out best ways, anyone who believes at this table that they know the best way and don't want to talk to other people, that to me is unfathomable. That we don't believe that a group of people crowdsourcing the wisdom of crowds. I mean, that was 10 years ago. So I would say, as we vote, yes, and Steve Quillisi said this, because and you kind of took the words out of my mouth and took my thunder away. But okay, because I can never means I should. Never are those equatable. Because I can means I should. I'm once again, and the policy differences that we're talking about, they're this much. They're this much. We all want the same thing. We just have a different way of getting to it. And if we don't allow many people's opinions to come into the mix, then we're not going to get the best solution. I have heard many, many, many people talk against Jeffrey Starkweather here, and I have heard venom in all of their voices. I have heard venom, and that is really troubling to me. And so upon that, I will say goodwill and honest intentions should rule the day in how we do this vote, not whether or not. Goodwill and honest intentions should rule the day in how we make this vote, and I will leave it at that.
Thank you. Rachel?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Ladies first.
Well, So I think it's really unfortunate that we are here. I think it's really you all, I mean, I've said it several times, that we need new processes, that so much of justice is how we do things. And you know, my hope in scheduling, in bringing this back, or in our last meeting when we discussed, you know, looking at the minutes and seeing if he would step down, my hope was that we could have some real dialogue, that there could be maybe a conversation that would prevent this whole thing from happening, but that did not happen. And so I'm deeply disappointed by the lack of communication, by, you know, which is, I think, a foundational reason why we have dysfunction, why we have division. It's because people won't just come together and sit down. I had two conversations with Jeffrey about this, trying to understand all the ins and outs. I've talked to as many people as I possibly could, including Randy Haney, who I met with last night. Thanks, Randy. We were talking about street paving, but we started talking about this conversation, and he said, listen to the people. And as I've been thinking about how I would vote this evening, that is what I did. And so I decided that I was going to keep a tally, that I was going to listen to members of my district, that I was going to listen to the people of Ojai, and that I would make my decision based on what I heard. Because I personally like Jeffrey, and so I also personally really like the mayor and really like Councilman Member Whitman, and we have an impasse.
I know you like me too.
I love you, and I love Leslie. I love everybody. That is my biggest problem, is I love too much. And so, but I mean, the people on this council who are most in conflict with him, and so I was having a hard time seeing how I could vote to keep him when my colleagues are struggling with him. And I thought about, well, if Sousa had a problem with the commissioner, if Leslie had a problem with the commissioner, I would want to support my colleagues. And at the same time, I think the members of his commission really like him, appreciate his expertise, like working with him. So, but the people of Ojai, the people have spoken. And they've spoken for his removal.
May I have a turn?
You want to take a break?
Do you need a break? I think Councilmember Whitman was next.
I'm good. Just go ahead and go ahead.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, okay.
Councilmember Whitman.
So I want to say that there's a lot of pointing at other people and saying you're divisive that happens in our community, and it happens, you know, right here on our dais. And I have made a concerted effort not to respond to things that had gotten me agitated, and I think we all need to do that. I think as a nation, it is not that long ago that in political chambers, there was a lot of discussion back and forth about how we're going to disagree, but how do we get to the point where we get the most good done in the circumstances. And we're missing that as a nation right now. It's us against them, and it's unfortunate. I do want to respond, a little bit of fact checking, just, you know, it's a little bit hard to say what we would have done had we the city received a formal request from Mr. Starkweather to continue the hearing until he returned from his trip, but we did not get that. Mr. Starkweather sent a communication to the newspaper, is all I'm aware of. So that's kind of a process issue. The other things I want to kind of address from a fact check standpoint is that there were a couple of people who came out saying, well, this is going to make us look really bad with the state as far as, affordable housing goes. And I've talked about this before. This is a time to talk about it again. And that is that I don't think that there's anybody on this council that wants to block affordable housing. In fact, on those issues where we've been allowed to vote on an affordable housing issue, we voted on the Becker project, where what we were instructed, because of the referendum, that we had the choice to either rescind that agreement ourselves as a council or allow it to go to the voters. And we voted unanimously to allow it to go to the voters. And so we also voted to adopt rent stabilization, which is an affordable housing issue. There were also, discussions about the Cabrillo, or a mention of the Cabrillo project. It isn't even in front of us yet, but there's already this prediction or accusation that the Cabrillo project is going to be opposed. Well, we don't know what's going to happen with the Cabrillo project, and I look forward to the opportunity to work on that project and see what good we can do for the community through that organization that wants to build affordable housing here. So with all of that said, I think that my decision comes down, and always comes down, to what I think is in the best interests of the people who reside here in the city of Ojai. And in my opinion, it's in the best interests of the residents of the city of Ojai to remove Mr. Starkweather from the Planning Commission. And so I'm going to make a motion that we remove Mr. Starkweather from the Planning Commission and any and all assignments to any City of Ojai committee or subcommittee.
Okay. Is there a second? I will second it.
Okay.
All right, we have a motion on the table.
Well, I
Mayor
haven't had a
Pro Tem?
chance to
Yeah,
speak,
no,
and I would be making a substitute motion.
Okay, well, I haven't spoken either. Why don't you speak, and then I will speak, and then you can.
Okay. So we received a 7-page letter where Jeffrey Starkweather challenged all the allegations that were made against him during the meetings, and that's posted on the city's website. And I hope that everyone here has read it. If not, I hope that you will read it, because I think we owe that to a commissioner when they have a right to, he was gone, and so we, especially since he was in Europe, we owe it to him to read that. What we really have here is a total breakdown in communication. If there were issues with Jeffrey Starkweather, then over the period, why did this come up when it did? Why did not Mayor Sticks meet with him months and months ago? That's what a mayor is supposed to do if there's problems with, that you meet face to face and you talk through the issues. Everyone recognizes that you can remove a commissioner for no reason at all. She has that right. Unfortunately, this got off to a very, very unfortunate start. You've heard that Chair Quillisi defended Commissioner Starkweather. All the commissioners 100% support him remaining on the commission. The Planning Commission is our most functional commission. They do excellent deliberations. They call for the motion after deliberations. I've watched that. And I don't know anyone who's, people have said that they've watched the meetings, but they have not specified anything that they observed at the actual Planning Commission that was a problem. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I did not hear anything. And the fact that the chair of the Planning Commission is so willing to speak out, to maintain that he has the right to stay on the commission till his term ends. I think he has two more years, okay? And if there are issues with the handbook, he addresses that in here. The Planning Commission is familiar with the handbook. The commissioners themselves have not raised any issues with the handbook. This is happening at a time when our city is incredibly unstable. There are so many lawsuits. We could be on the verge of bankrupting the city as I take a look at what's going on. There are 2 other commissions that have a very difficult time functioning. They can't get a quorum. It's not so easy to get dedicated volunteers. Planning commissioners have quit because it's a hard job. They meet twice a week. It takes dedication. I hear that my job is to see all perspectives, and I do my best to listen respectively. Many things have been said, have been repeated, over and over again that weren't true. I am going to make a motion in just a moment, but we received many letters in support of Commissioner Starkweather. So I don't know that if you really meant that our removal is in response to what the community wants. I think our removal is in response to what certain council members want, and I recognize that right. But to say that this is in response to the entire community, I think is a mischaracterization. We have a very diverse community. I welcome diversity. That's how we get to see the big picture, and we are the policymakers. I never thought of the Planning Commission as they make recommendations to us. We can take it or leave it. We can challenge it. I would like to say this. I'm going to read from a letter from Sean McDermott, and what I'm reading has been stated by many other people. If you go on the city website, you will see what I'm about to read over and over again from those who support Commissioner Starkweather remaining on the Planning Commission. He states, I support keeping Jeffrey Starkweather as the City of Ojai Planning Commissioner. I have read the public comment published through noon today, and very little of the comment has anything to do with Jeffrey's role as a planning commissioner. As someone who has watched several years of planning commission meetings, I can see he is an engaged commissioner, a follower of Ojai City Code, and a consensus worker. He operates no differently than previous commissioners who also sometimes had political perspectives different from the majority of city council at the time. All commissioners were allowed to serve out their full terms, independent of city council political alignment. Much of the public comment I've read is a repeat of the talking points presented by the mayor in her letter in July, where Jeffrey was being accused of misogyny, sending too many emails, and essentially not being a good planning commissioner. The majority city council already agreed that none of these were the case. There has also been concern expressed that Jeffrey's role as president of the Ojai Valley Democratic Club is not compatible with his role as a planning commissioner. This is not the case, and using such an argument to unseat a commissioner would possibly be a First Amendment violation. It would be similar to assessing that Andy's role as a litigator Rachel's role as an astrologist or Sousa's role as a yoga teacher somehow make them not capable of making good decisions on city council. The measure needs to be the discussion and decision quality during meetings, not what they do in another role beyond the city of Ojai role. As long as the roles remain separate, there is no incompatibility or conflict of interest. If planning commissioners can be removed when there is political misalignment between city council and the planning commission, then clearly the city protocols on commission terms need to be updated. Until then, all commissioners should stay seated and continue holding productive meetings. And this last part, I agree with everything, but especially this last part. We should be grateful we have so many citizens in all the commission positions who are willing to offer the city their expertise and time. We should be thanking them rather than attacking them. And on that note, can I make the motion now?
Yeah, and just to clarify, for a substitute motion, it has to be accepted. Can you clarify this on the city attorney?
No, a substitute motion is, if made with the second, stands in front of the main motion. What you may be thinking of that would have to be accepted is a friendly amendment. That would have to be accepted by the maker of the motion.
Okay.
But a substitute motion stands in front of it as a different motion.
Okay, do you want to make a friendly amendment or a separate motion?
I'll make a separate motion. Okay, the staff report gave us two logical legal options. And my motion is to take no further action and that Jeffrey Starkweather is allowed to remain seated subject to the same term expiration that he has had since appointed May 22, 2026. And I would add, I like what an Ojai citizen Ulrich Brugger said. We're going to keep a watch on you, make sure that you don't break any rules, and that you, when you're speaking publicly, that you identify yourself as a public citizen. And I believe you already do that, but it becomes even more important now.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All right. Well, I would like to speak. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for participating 3 times, potentially. And I am also very grateful to the commissioners, to all the volunteers in our city, and I'm grateful to Mr. Starkweather for passionately pursuing his beliefs. And I just want to be clear, this is not personal. I came in here with an open mind. And I truly am grateful to all the volunteerism from Mr. Starkweather and many others, many people in our community. That said, I think as a council, we need to, as Councilmember Whitman said, do what's best for Ojai. And I know that all of us feel that same way, so that's why we're here. And yes, the people have spoken. I agree with Councilmember Lang. In the July 11th, it was about 3-1 in favor of removing Councilmember Starkweather. Today, in terms of the letters, it was 25-15, so that's about 63%.
Can we count the 33 women?
Yeah, can I change the, I'm sorry.
Okay, okay. Right, anyway, the tally maybe, but that was at 5 o'clock. And I don't see this as a conflict. I think one only sees conflict if that's what you want to see. I see this as policy. And we are here to make the best policy decisions for our city and make sure that it runs well. And the reason this came up, Councilmember Francine, as I said this before, that email was released. I had so many people talk about people speaking, asking me to do something about this. That's why we are here. And in terms of what is best for the city, I think it's in our best interest to find a commissioner who is devoted to service of the city and the city council, and someone who does not make demands on staff, council, or others. And I also feel that, in this specific situation, I did reach out to Commissioner Starkweather twice, asking for a conversation, and it was declined. So I did my due. Let me finish. Please do not interrupt me. I don't interrupt anyone, really don't, so I would like that respect. Mr. Starkweather requested a meeting with staff. Going back to the original issue, our interim city manager has a lot to do. We went over that in the last meeting. And I really think it's important to respect staff time. And so the conversation didn't happen, and that was Mr. Starkweather's choice. In addition, in the meeting on the 11th, many people thought that Mr. Starkweather had been removed. Some people asserted that he was only asked to resign. If the second interpretation is correct, and 3 council members asked Mr. Starkweather to step down, then why didn't he do that? Commissioners are here to work for the council, to help the council. And so I just think it's in the best interest at this time to find a commissioner who operates in the spirit of service rather than taking up so much staff time. And I think, you know, we have a motion on the table. And, yeah, okay, go ahead.
I just wanted to say about the letters of support that there were the 32 who signed the one letter. So I wanted to just let you know I counted all of those in the tally, and yeah, so that number on the public records or on the what we received today doesn't accurately reflect all those.
Right. There were 25 letters in support of removing him, yep, and 15 in not in support of that. Okay. So we have 2 more comments, then we'll vote on the motion.
Sousa, go ahead.
Mayor Sticks, I want to say this for the record. If your concern was staff time, you would not have raised this issue in the first place. Okay, you don't have to agree with me, but I want to state that for the record. I would like to know exactly what this dismissal has cost the city, not just the time in fine and what we're paying our city manager and our attorney for special meetings, but it's disrespectful of our time. We are volunteers. Some people think we get a stipend, we get an insurance, we don't get a salary. It's been disrespectful I feel like this whole proceeding has been disrespectful of my time. I have so many other more important pressing things that I feel we need to be working on.
Well, and just a reminder, it was your motion to bring this back, which is why we're here.
Yes, because
okay.
I felt that, you know, I mean, that was the only choice that you gave us.
Well,
you brought this forward in the most unproductive, unprofessional way.
Let's keep it on policy and not make it personal. That is in Rosenberg's rules. So let's do that. Councilmember Rule?
Yes, I would. I just want to say to Rachel that I think you know that you can get people to come and say whatever you ask them to come and say. I mean, to the extent that you can call your friends. My friends offered. I said no because they didn't really know the issue. So the other thing I want to say is, you know, people are much more. They're very passionate to remove Jeffrey Starkweather, and it goes all the way back to their belief that he set up the Democratic Club vote. We heard that. We've heard everything all the way through. So you are certainly free to decide how you're going to vote based on how you're going to vote. I mean, you use whatever criteria is for you to use is what you would use. And I just have to say, in my opinion, tallying up numbers in this particular case, when it is so divisive and it is so clearly a line drawn where you don't have people crossing over, it's dangerous to do so. And finally, I would say, as I have done when I could not make a decision, the option of abstaining remains. And I know you know that, but sometimes it's difficult to, that is when you can't make a decision. You know, you can't find a way to make this right. That is why abstention exists. And I have used that on occasion when I could not find a way to make it right. And as they do in law, you don't really take into consideration how an abstention will figure in the total tally. That's not really what it's about. It's about your vote and your ability to make the decision, that a fair and just decision that you can live with. So I just wanted to put that out because I think it's important. I think it's really important. You are, I mean, I'm not gonna, you know, whatever. So that is my, I think that's my final statement on this, except for that I really do have to agree that our legislative agenda has been hijacked by a lot of things that don't serve this public, the citizens of Ojai, very well. We are now into our 8th month, and geez, I wouldn't say that, you know, we've done a good job.
Councilmember Lang, you want to make a comment?
Yes, yes. I first of all, thank you for that. And the people who stood up here tonight and who wrote in, that takes a lot of courage. Mm-hmm. And you heard some of them say they were afraid of potential retaliation. Yes, there's a lot of passion. I am not going to judge how they came to the decision that they need to come, but they did. And honestly, the voice of our community, of the individuals in our community, is the most important thing to me. Because we are a government by the people, for the people. And those people elect us, and they trust us, sometimes probably more than others. And so I just want to thank everyone who sent in their public comments. I want to thank everyone who showed up to talk, not just this time, but last time and the time before. Regardless of what motivated you, some of them were motivated by that email. It's justifiable. As I said, I was really triggered by it when I saw it for the first time. And so I just want to kind of hold all of those people and all of those voices and say, your voice counts. You matter. Even the people who write poems about me in a negative way, you count, you matter, I'm listening. And so I just wanted to say that. And so when I am talking about taking a tally, this is a no-win situation. This is, how do I decide between two bad things? Removing him has a whole range of potential consequences and political consequences. Keeping him has a whole range of potential consequences and political consequences for all of us, and for me personally. And so when I have to choose between something I don't want to say yes to and something I don't want to say yes to, I'd love to find a middle ground. When I do that, I go to logic. And my logic, I can find justifications for any argument about his political involvement, about misogyny, about all the roles that he wears. I can find a yes or a no, a pro or a con for every single one of those, and I've gone through that extensively. Like Sousa said, I mean, I've probably spent $20,000 in my billable time working on this. It's been a lot of time navigating and negotiating and weighing out the pros and cons. And so the most logical thing that I can do right now in good faith, coming from my own integrity, is to listen to what I heard the people of our community say. And I counted all of the letters, including the people who, I started from scratch. I started from just the ones that came in for tonight. There are so many that were here from the July 11th meeting, but I started over. And I read every word, I highlighted, I listened, and that That's how I'm making my decision. Right or wrong, that's what I'm doing. And I actually think it makes me a really good representative of my community to be making a decision that way. And I'm not sitting here deliberating about it like I usually do. I found a way to choose. I found a tipping point to choose between two bad choices.
Okay, well, I think it's time that we call the question. Could we have the roll call, please, on the substitute motion, Weston?
Yeah, yes, Mayor. And before that, for
Do you wanna-
clarity, we'll repeat the motion.
Okay.
We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Francina with a second by Councilmember Rule to take no further action toward removal of the commissioner, and that Jeffrey Starkweather remain seated on the same term to which they were appointed as planning commissioner.
Okay.
Just want to say my motion is based on the fact that the entire Planning Commission supports Jeffrey Starkweather remaining on the commission, and my observation of every planning commission for years and years. He's an excellent planning commissioner. In the history of Ojai, no one has ever been removed for no cause like this. This is a
We have a motion and a second, and we've restated the motion. Roll call. Councilmember Whitman.
Tell me what we're voting again.
To take no further action towards removal as commissioner, and that Jeffrey Starkweather remains seated on the same term as planning commissioner to which they were appointed.
No.
Councilmember Lang.
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina.
yes.
Councilmember Rule.
Yes.
Mayor Sticks.
No. Okay, could we have a vote on the original motion,
Wait a
please?
minute.
Before that,
Oh.
we have a motion by Councilmember Whitman to remove Mr. Starkweather from the Planning Commission, plus any and all other city assignments such as city subcommittee or ad hoc committee. But that motion does not have a second.
I
No,
second
that
it.
motion did get a
Second.
second by the mayor.
Thank you for the clarity.
Okay, could we have the roll call, please,
Do we need a repeat?
of the motion?
Yeah.
Make the record clear.
Once again, to remove Mr. Starkweather, Jeffrey Starkweather, from the Planning Commission, plus any and all other city assignments, such as a city subcommittee or ad hoc committee. Roll call. Councilmember
I
Rule.
need a clarification. When you say city assignments, are those assignments on a commission? It doesn't mean that he can't serve on, there's all kinds of city causes and committees and all that.
Any that he,
I understand the motion to be any city role that Mr. Starkweather has would be removed if this took effect. To my knowledge, the roles he has is a city planning commissioner and a member of the Planning Commission's Affordable Housing Committee, and perhaps a member of the Planning Commission's Parking Committee.
and it's-
he would leave all three of those roles. He could
and-
be reappointed, one second.
Yeah.
He could always be reappointed in the future by the council
correct.
at any time such as the council may choose. It's not a bar for life, it's a bar for now.
Okay, roll call, please, Weston?
Roll call. Councilmember Rule.
Absolutely, positively, without a doubt, no.
Mayor Sticks.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Francina.
No.
Councilmember Whitman.
Yes.
Councilmember Lang.
Yes.
Motion
Okay.
passes.
All right, thank you. The motion passes. Thank you all for being here. Any comments from the city manager, city attorney at this point, or?
No, Madam Mayor.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you all for being here, and we appreciate your participation. Meeting's adjourned. Thank you.